What's up, guys? Hazy M's here. Got another YouTube video for you guys. Today's video is going to be a reaction video to a YouTuber named Darthmicrotransactions. You might have heard of him, might have seen him on YouTube, watched him on Twitch. Seems like a pretty genuine, heartfelt, good dude. I don't know him personally, just from what I've seen on stream and on his YouTubes. And he's going to be discussing things that can ruin games for you. And I think he hits on a lot of good points, and his opinions, I think, are pretty spot on. I agree with most of what he says. I will stop it here and there as we get going in the video here. You know, I don't like doing a whole lot of react videos, but this one I really felt like I needed to do so maybe more people can see it. You know, I'm sure the people that sub to Darth already have seen it, obviously, but I just want to maybe keep spreading it and spreading and spreading it, because it really makes you think about how you're gaming. But without further ado, let's get right into it here. This can ruin games for you.
I very often see people ruin games for themselves. In fact, back in the day when I was younger and I was playing Super Nintendo games, I would put in a game cartridge, I would play it through, and I'd be like, wow, that was a really good game at the end of it. And I'd be like, I'm impressed with that one. Donkey Kong Country was amazing. And then I would turn it off and I'd put in a different game. But because I put in that new game, it didn't inadvertently make the previous one dog shit out of nowhere. But now in modern gaming, we do this where a game will come out, and if we're not playing it for 3 years, suddenly the game is bad. And a lot of these games can be designed in...
I'm going to stop it right there. He makes a very good point. Back in the day, I grew up in the 90s. I say 90s. So, yeah. I was born in 86, so yeah, I grew up mostly in the 90s, and grew up with Nintendo, played a little bit of Atari, 64, Sega, PlayStation, Xbox 360, so on and so forth. Had most of the... I didn't have every system, but I had a friend group where we all had access. Like if I had Sega, my friend had Super Nintendo. But that's getting off on a tangent like I usually do. Anyways... But back to his point, he said, you know, you put in a game, say you play Super Mario Brothers, and then you played it through, maybe beat it, maybe you didn't, and you're like, you know what, Super Mario Bros. Was a great game. It was good. So you put that one off to the side. Super Mario Bros. 2 comes out. Doesn't get received very well from some people. And, you know, I enjoyed Mario 2. I didn't care for it as much as Super Mario 1. Then Super Mario 3 comes out, right? Super Mario 3 comes out. Great game. I love Super Mario 3. Hours and hours of just sitting there trying to get through levels with friends in different ways to get the whistles, to skip levels and get through different areas and skip certain levels that we didn't like. But that doesn't mean that Super Mario Brothers was a terrible game. You know, I would say Super Mario Bros. And Super Mario 3 are both very good games, great games. But let's keep going here and see what he says.
Consumable manners, where they're not meant to be.
Oh, that was the other thing he said. That we expected games to be able to be played for hours and hours and hours and hours. But once you've beat that game, or say you've put 100 hours into it, just because you can't put 200 into it doesn't mean the game is terrible. I've played games that were amazing, that were maybe like 16 to 20 hours. I've played games that were absolute shit, that to get through it, you had to put 50 to 40 hours in to get through the story. I've played games that were somewhere in the middle. You know, I put 30 hours in, and yeah, it was an okay game. Nothing that blew me away. You know, and I even had this, I guess, misconception. You know, people always want to get their value out of the money for the game, which I totally understand. And I used to have this idea where I would be like, okay, if I'm paying $70 for this game, that should be 70 hours of gameplay, $1 an hour. But in reality, I've gotten away from that thought process because of what I told you before. I could spend 40 to 50, maybe even $60 on a game that had a phenomenal, amazing story and put maybe 20 to 25 hours in, maybe even less, and I would still be okay with that. I'm not going to let the monetary value ruin my experience unless the game is just absolute crap. And he goes on to something else here that I will stop in and discuss as well, that I think also contributes to people expecting like a 10 out of 10 experience, or I don't know, like just amazing game. Everything that you thought of, could have dreamed of in a game is in it, and it just doesn't happen.
Games that you can play indefinitely. Sometimes these games are only meant to be absorbed for a certain amount of hours, and then the game is over.
That's kind of what I just was talking
The
about.
point of this video is you should probably stop ruining games for yourself if this is something that seems to ring true for you. You know, like I used a Super Nintendo example. We didn't, when the new Super Nintendo game come out, look at it 2 months in advance, buy, you know, guides and all that in advance, study for it like it's an exam, know what the best builds are, the best pathing, all of that, and then basically try to speed run our enjoyment out of the game and shorten the length of the game for ourselves.
That's a huge, huge, great point, great example that we want to be so perfect, or maybe perfect isn't the right word. We want to be so elite, maybe the elitist mindset, to where I need to do the highest damage. I need to clear this the fastest. I need to get through this the fastest. I need to be the best of the best mage. I need to be the best of the best warrior. And you do that by doing what he just said. You're looking up guides. You're playing the alpha. You're playing the beta, or you're watching people who are playing the alpha and the beta. You're watching people who have spent hours and hours in the alpha and the betas and the play tests. And then you have these people that will write guides that mine data about the game to figure out things to do to maximize survivability, or maximize damage, or maximize amount of loot you can get, or what have you. And what I do, or I try to do, if there's a game coming out that I know I want to play, I don't sit there and look up guides. I stay away from the alpha, stay away from the beta. I think the last time I played a playtest was for Diablo 4. And I have gotten to the point to where I want to experience the game blind before I go and look at a guide. And that really was drove home for me when I played Last Epoch. I went to max roll once just to get a basics idea of my first hard character that I was playing. It didn't even matter. I died, I think, at like level 18 maybe. So I didn't really get far into the build. But I didn't know anything about Last Epoch. Zero. Zilch. I've watched a few people play it here and there, but I've never looked up any guides. Never, except for that little bit on max roll where I looked up a warlock, but that didn't really help me because I had no idea about anything. Didn't do any play tests for the game. Didn't do any early access even for the game. I bought it when it came out, and I bought it a few months after it came out. And I've been loving every second of it because I'm learning the game as I play it. I went through every character on hardcore and ended up losing every hardcore character of every class. I think the highest I got was like Act 7 with a sorcerer actually. And then a saber-tooth tiger just came out of nowhere and slapped me, and I died in about 2-3 hits. But yeah, I mean, If you're looking forward to a game, yeah, sure, watch the trailer. Watch a little bit of someone playing the beta. But don't go look up guides and study it unless that's what you're into. Like, I'm not saying you can't do that. If you're into being top tier damage, if you're in some league or challenge to be world first this, or the first class to do this, or what have you, go for it. If that's your thing, that's your jam, you're having fun doing that, do that. But if you were like me and you need to kind of pull the reins back a little bit, well, I think it worked out for the best for me because I'm really enjoying Last Epoch right now, and that's probably what I'm gonna be playing later tonight. But let's keep going here. We still got a lot to get to.
I played Path of Exile going into it like blind on purpose, and I didn't do that for the fun of it. I did it because I wanted to make content from the point of view of someone who hadn't played the game before. I wanted to see what that experience was like.
I am currently doing that.
Rough, and
I'm currently doing that with Last Epoch. I'm just playing through it, seeing how far I can get, and going from there. And yes, now that I've played hardcore, next time I choose to play a hard character, I probably will look up a hardcore build because you know what? I've experienced all the classes in hardcore, and now it's like, okay, well, now I want to pick a character, do a legit build, and see if I can't get through hardcore, at least through the story.
Was pretty rough, but inadvertently, because I did that, I actually extended how long I was enjoying the game in an entry level for like 3 whole seasons of the game because I wasn't just copy pasting the build or something. Now, I don't think that that's the recommended way to play that game, so it's sort of a bad example. But the point stands that I got to play and enjoy the learning and noob experience for a pretty long time before I then started looking up guides and min-maxing and asking people's opinions and learning boss fights and things. I had a really good time learning the basics of the game. And I think that this portion of like not knowing what you're going into in gaming has gotten lost recently.
Yes,
and
for sure,
100%,
dude.
Us YouTubers and Twitch live streamers are part of the problem. We
get
early access very often in the games, so you see half.
And that's where I'm saying, like, yeah, if you're a prevalent YouTuber content creator for video games and they give you an early access key, what are you gonna do? Of course, you're gonna test it out and play it, and then give something back to your fans. But if you don't get that early access, say he didn't get early access to a game, then he can make that conscious decision to not look up guys, not look up strategy builds or early, I can't think of the right word, early thought processes in the character, stats and skills, and just go into it blindly, like he's saying he did with Path of Exile, and he's had a ton of fun doing that.
Of what the game has to offer. There's the debate, if I'm going to defend myself, that lets you know if you're going to even buy the game or not, because you get to see some gameplay. But the mystery of Path of Exile 2 is going to be gone for me because I have already played the early access of the first.
And that's what I don't want.
Acts.
I want
what
the mystery
game is before it comes out. So because of that, I'm able to see both sides of it. Because I remember, it wasn't that long ago, I'm literally a nobody on YouTube. No one's watching me. I have no one in my live stream chats. I have no early access to anything. I remember that vividly because that was literally just the last year. And the difference that I can see in pre-knowing a lot of these games versus having no idea what I'm going into is visible for myself. And it's also, I think, not just a streamer YouTuber thing. I think if you're watching these videos and planning everything and knowing what builds are coming, and like I say, speed running your enjoyment of the game.
Yeah, we just talked about that.
100%, shorter
100%,
than you expected for the money you paid on that game because you purposely.
Another prime example, Remnant. Me and my buddy got Remnant. We probably put 60, 70 hours in before. Maybe that's an exaggeration. Maybe let's say 40 to 50. We probably put 40 to 50 hours in before we went and looked up guides on builds to do.
Speed ran your way through it. In my opinion, you don't need to be the best in games. You You don't need to
Yes,
be the top
100%.
1% unless you're competitive. Then this video
Yeah,
doesn't mean
yep,
anything.
exactly. If
If
you're
you're the type of person
competitive,
that's,
like, don't listen
a
to
League of
me.
Legends
Don't listen
player,
to
all
him.
your enjoyability comes from climbing ladders, etc. I have friends like that. I can understand. God bless you. Go have fun, blast, be competitive. But if you're someone who just enjoys games because you like games, then speed running your way through it and purposely trying to get good before you even have your hands on the game can have an inverse effect than what you're trying to do. You're looking into a game because you're excited about it and you're looking forward to play it. But looking into that game so far into the future and hyping yourself up and planning out all of this stuff is very often going to make the game worse for you.
Yes.
And
Another thing I'm gonna say is that's why a lot of the times I don't like early access. I was so interested in Last Epoch, so interested, but I did not want to buy it in early access. I wanted the finished product, the finished game. And that's one thing that steers me away from early access games. Yeah, I put them on my wish list because I want to watch them. I want to see how they're doing. I want to see their progress. I want to see where it's going. When can I expect to play the full release? But by waiting before the full release, then I get to experience all that excitement, all that enjoyment about finding a new build or a new armor or a new city or character or some way I can do something. It's all new and exciting. But when you know that, you're like, it's almost like you're a robot, like, okay, well, I'm doing this build, building this here, grabbing this armor, putting this potion here, grabbing this elixir, popping this 2 buffs before I go fight this guy, which is all fine and dandy, right? If that's what you're into, if that's what you want to do, if you don't want to experience all of the other stuff, then go on, do it. That's fine too.
then at the end, when you're done with it faster than you thought, you're going to be disappointed feeling because you thought, I was so looking forward to this game and hyped myself so much up and knew so much about it that I thought this game was going to go forever. You can both build a level of ridiculous expectation on yourself as well as remove the discoverability and enjoyability from games at the same time by looking too much into them too soon. So this ties to
100%.
multiple facets of conversation I wanted to have today. One is it's okay to quit a game because
Yep.
games are, in my opinion,
100%.
consumable by nature by a lot of
100%.
these. And the history, at least my personal history, I can only talk for myself, but my personal history of gaming has been picking up a game, playing it, and quitting the game.
100%. That I'm the same way. Same way. And if you've been to my channel, followed me, seen some of my reviews, I'll tell you, in most games, I beat it, I get through the story, I'm putting away, going on the shelf, it's collecting dust, I'm moving on to the next game. The only game that I come back to repeatedly and still always have an itch to play is World of Warcraft. And it's always been that way. I've played tons and tons of hours of World of Warcraft. Back when it first came out, I played Classic when that came out a few years ago. I played Wrath of the Lich King Classic. I skipped TBC just because I wanted to take a break. And I've even played most of the retail WoW expansions, at least through the story. It's literally probably one of the only games that I always go back to. I guess I could say StarCraft 2. I still play StarCraft 2 occasionally with some buddies of mine because that's kind of what we grew up on. That's what we like. We enjoy StarCraft. Anyways, let's keep going.
And the only game that has kept my interest for 20 years was old school RuneScape.
His is RuneScape,
Even
mine's
that
World of
game
Warcraft.
had to remake itself in order to bring people back
Yep.
into the game. I had quit the game until they made it
Yep,
old
same
school
with me.
because I
For
didn't
World
like
of
RuneScape.
Warcraft Classic, I came back.
If Star Wars Galaxies remade itself and came out tomorrow, I'd be playing that. But other than that,
Yeah,
there's not many games. I guess I'm playing WoW Classic, but these are MMOs, okay? There's not many games that have kept my interest for the entirety of my life.
Yeah,
And if you
100%.
think about it with your games, do you have any games that have kept your interest for the entirety of life? And if you do, one might come to your head when I say that. If you do, think about how rare and special that is and how much love you probably have for that one game. Then think, can you take that and put it on any other of these early access or any of these other games that are coming out? Do you think it's going to hold up to that weight you hold and that high regard you hold of your previous games? Probably not. So don't do that to yourself because you're going to be disappointed over and
100%,
over
dude,
and over
100%.
again. And I myself have been disappointed over and over and over again with games. Lower your expectations, and not in the way you're thinking where I'm saying just let companies get away with pumping you garbage, but don't expect every game to be
Yeah.
the main game. Purchase games
Exactly.
with the nature of enjoying them while you're playing them and then letting them go peacefully afterwards
Yep.
until you find a
Yep.
new one. Do your
Yeah.
research to make sure you're not buying something that's garbage, but also
100%.
try not to
100%.
spoil the entire game for yourself
100%, dude. And that's what I
before you
try to
actually
do.
get your
That's what I
hands
try to
on it.
do.
My favorite experiences right now in gaming are me going in blind to games that people are telling me are the most goated games of all time. I still haven't finished Elden Ring of all games. And I have heard that Elden Ring is literally one of the best games on the planet. So when I went through and played halfway through of that, basically blind, and was surprised by boss after boss after boss, I got the true Elden Ring like experience of first trying it because I didn't do it on purpose. I just didn't watch content, but I hadn't had it ruined for me already. In the years that that game's been out, if I had watched speedrun after speedrun, if I had watched Let's Plays, if I knew all the boss fights, or before I streamed it, I planned the day before and watched everything to make sure I'd be good at the game and all that, I wouldn't have had a good time playing the game. I would have made it a job for myself more than it already is.
Yep.
So, the point of the
100%,
video
dude.
is try not to ruin games for yourself. It's okay if you
It's
quit a
pretty
game.
simple. Don't make the game a job, kind of like he said, you know. Unless that's what you're going for. You want that competitive, be the best.
Quitting a game doesn't mean the game is bad. And look at things as consumable by nature. And if you try to stay somewhat blind to the game that you want to play, in my opinion, it'll make things better. Because think of it this way: if the game is bad and it's going to be bad, being blind isn't going to save the game. It's not going to make the game good. So you'll know it's bad either way. But if the game is
Yeah.
really good and you find out it's really good, surely you would rather have the experience of discovering how good that game was for yourself, right? If it's a 10 out of 10 game, that's a world.
All right, guys. That is it. Brought up some great points. We kind of discussed the different points, went over everything. We're 22 minutes in. This is getting ridiculously long. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for hanging out for as long as you did. Please hit that like. Please hit that subscribe button. And have a good day or night wherever you're at in the world. Much love, and we will see you on the next one.